Video, I'm going to review how I analyze the text data for the assignment. So in the browser here, you can see I have a directory with all the text files and Word documents that I'm going to analyze. I'm going to create a new notebook to do the analysis in. Alright, I'm in my notebook and I'm going to import glob. This is a module which allows me to list files in a directory. So if I do list of files equals glob.glob, then let's look at what that produces. So that's my list of files. So far, that's all we've done. We've got a list of files. That's what we're going to loop over eventually. Now before I try and be fancy with creating a loop, what I'll do is I'll open up a single text file and see if I can accomplish the goal there. So I'm going to use with open and then the name of the file, so we'll call Dr. Yawn. And I'm going to open it in read mode, and I'm going to give it a file handle. I'm going to do file.readlines. I'm going to store that to a variable. Alright, so let's look at what the contents of that is. File content. I'm using tab completion there. So what read lines gets me back is, not surprisingly, a list of lines from the file. I'm going to try another method here, or just read. And there I get back one long string with a bunch of new lines inserted. So whichever one of these works, it's not really super relevant, but I'm going to use read lines. It's one way of just reading in the file and inserting lines. So that gets me back this long list. Now, I don't actually need a list, I just want a bunch of words. So let's see. I'll have to iterate over that list and get rid of all the new lines. So I'm going to switch back to read. That was actually, and I don't have to have, I just have one long string. So I'm going to replace all of the new lines with spaces, because in the end what I'm going to care about are words. And that output goes to screen right now. So now I want to save that file content. Alright, so now I've got the file content as one long string. And at this point, I'm going to get rid of all the punctuation. I'm going to replace all the punctuation with spaces. So now I have to figure out how am I going to get rid of punctuation. Okay, so I just do a quick search, and let's just try this. I'm not familiar with Translate, but we can give it a shot. I'm going to have to pass it the string that I care about, which in this case is that. And then it's going to complain that this string module isn't loaded, so that's why I'm going to have to import string. And so usually if I am now operating out of sequence, I'll just restart the notebook and start fresh. So it's going to reload everything. And it says translate takes exactly one argument, 2 are given. So now I'm going to have to go back to that web page and figure out what's going on. So for higher versions of Pythons, that's probably like 3. We'll use this one. Let's try this. Right. That looks, does that look any different? So Dr. Yawn, we got rid of the period in Dr. Yawn. It looks like we got rid of the question mark, but not all the characters are gone, a lot of them. Primarily looks like the dashes and the double quotes are persistent. So I'll have to figure out how to remove those. Alright, so we've removed one of the double quotes, so that's good. Let's see if we can find this one and replace that. It's paired opposite. So you can find an apostrophe and get rid of that. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. And these dashes, we're going to have to get rid of those. Alright, so that looks pretty reasonable. On here, it looks like there was a URL. So we'll have to figure out how to get rid of URLs. I'm gonna get a new variable here, so we can have a little bit more clearer explanation of what we're doing. So I want to replace any word that has the word HTTP or www in it, because those are probably URLs. So I'm going to get rid of all the URLs that way. I don't know if I can do wildcard replacement, so let me give that a try. No, looks like wildcard replacement is not going to work in a replace function, so let's look that up. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna skip over to something a little bit easier. So if it starts, I know that there's a starts with test, and so if the word starts with HTTP, we could get rid of it that way. So maybe we'll break this into a list and then remove all the words that start with a certain string. Okay, so I'm gonna put a reminder here. Still need to eliminate. All right. So let's break this into a list. And we just simply split on a space. It gets us a really long list of words. And then looking at this, I recognize that there's some uppercase words here, so let's cast those to a lowercase. So I thought, alright, so let's just string that lower, see if that can work. Ah, here we go. That was the issue. We're looking at the wrong variable. Alright, now we've cast it to lowercase, and we've got a long list of things. So we're going to have to remove all these empty spaces. Those are the things we don't care about. Alright, this one I've used before, so I'm pretty familiar with it. We just throw in a while loop. Alright, so we've cleaned up all the characters in this cell. And then we've removed a few extra characters that didn't pass through, and now we've got a list. So let's take a look at that list of words. Okay, so this is a pretty exciting list of all the words in the file. There are some duplicates. So for instance, A and A, probably don't need that twice. And so this is, let's take a look at this. This is the type of variable is a list. And so what I'm going to use here is a trick where I can convert this to a set, and the set removes all duplicates. And so now there's only one word present, and then I'm going to convert that back to a list. So now this is a list with only unique entries in it. So let's take a look at how long that is. So the length after removing all duplicates is 504 words, whereas if you look at the length of the original list, there's 932. So about a factor of 2 duplication for the words. All right, so let's save this to a variable. All right, so we've got 504 unique words in a list. And now we're going to have to remove stop words, because if you look at that list that we've got, there's still words that are considered stop words, like for, and so we're going to have to remove those from our list. So let's take a look at NLTK. It's a pretty handy library for natural language processing. Let's move this up, top of the cell. I always like to keep all my import statements at the top of the cell. Let's go back to that. So the set of stop words for English, that's provided here. Right, so that's all of our stop words. So then let's see how to use that. Wonderful. Fine. Yeah, there we go. Alright, so we've got these list comprehensions here. So we've got a list of stop words, and basically we're saying for each word, I'm going to do this here. For each word in that list of unique words, keep the value if W is not in the list of stop words. And then the alternative version, if you don't like list comprehensions, is this much easier to comprehend version down here. So let's keep this version rather than list comprehensions. So we're going to initialize our list, the filtered sort of Alright, let's take a look at the filtered string list now. So this is all of the words in our original document here, dryarn.txt, that are not in the list of NLTK stop words. So you'll notice there's a word here that starts with HTTPS www, so that's probably a URL. Probably a good idea to remove the URL from the word list. Let's write another list here. Let's see. If it's not in the stop words, we'll append it to the new list. So if it starts with a HTTP, we don't want it. So we'll have a, if it's not in HTTP, then we'll add it to our list. Let's take a look at what that produces. So now we've got that same list of words, but without words that start with HTTP. So that's relatively certain. We could be really aggressive and say, like, let's remove things that starts with www, but I'll not go down that route. So at this point, I'm ready to write this line, this list of words into a text file. So how are we going to do that? Well, we have to remember the name of the file here. Let's put that as a variable. File to analyze that. Okay, so I'm going to use this file to analyze as the name of the file. Right, so we've got that word list, we've got the file to analyze, that's the name of the file. So we know we're going to have to do like a print that. Let's hold this off for a little while. I can get that. Now if I want to print the quotes around that, let's do this. Alright, so we've got the file name with double quotes around it, and then a colon. So now we want to add in the values. So we know we have this filtered string list, that's what we're going to use here, but we can't just append a list and all the values, so we're going to have to be a little bit more wise. Let's try a print statement. A write statement to me is actually a little bit easier in this case. So let's do with open like that, and then we're going to put it in the write mode this time as file write file.write. Alright, we're missing a semicolon. Alright, so now let's take a look at that out.dat file. What's in there? Alright, so that's what we were printing. Now we're writing it to file. But again, we want to add in that list. So we want to do that once. We're going to do a for word in the list. Word. Okay, so let's see what that produces. We're looping over the word. Alright, let's refresh our out.dat file and take a look at what that is. Alright, so we've got one file name and then all the unique list of words in that file. So this is a good sign. We've got one file that does exactly what we want. Now I would say is the time to pivot. Actually, before we pivot off to the loop, let's restart this whole thing. So I'm gonna I've cleared out, not that one, I'm going to clear out my output file and delete that. And then I'm going to restart the entire notebook just to make sure everything's looking good. Alright, so that ran pretty quickly. Now produced an out file, and that is still there. So I've sort of checkpointed myself to make sure that everything is what I expect it is. Now we want to take all this stuff that we learned and we want to apply it to all the files in our list. Let's take that list of files and let's make clear what we did here. So this document, one file. All right. So I have this list of files, and I realize some of them are text files and other ones are docx files. So that means we're going to have to do a slightly different different approach, because the method that we used here with open, that doesn't work for docx files. So we're going to have to open up docx files. So actually we're going to go back and clarify, open one text file, a txt file, and then we're going to have a separate section before we get to this to show how we're going to do it for docx files. Alright, so we're going to have to go through this process. It's going to be somewhat similar, so we should be a little bit quicker this time, but we have to open up that docx file. Alright, search shows that there's a file, so let's try that out. Opening a document. I want to open an existing one, so let's try this. From that, and we'll open up a document. If that doesn't work out, we'll have to come back. By the way, I should cite my sources, so I'm going to include the URL here just as I'm documenting what I did. Also, I will include this here as another source. Stopwords. Okay, so I've got some documentation, and then we'll document that. That was up here, yeah. Okay, so now I've got some documentation. Let's read one of those. So let's look at week 10 document 1. Okay, the output of that isn't exactly a standard variable, so we're going to have to go back to our documentation and figure out how to actually open that and get the file contents. All right. Let's just grab this. We'll see if that works. I'm not opposed to stealing other people's code. That's what Stack Overflow is for. So I'm going to have this function. Let's see what it does when I hand it my file name. Alright, docx not defined. That means that I imported my docx library up here, so I'm going to restart everything to just force a reload of everything from scratch. Actually, let's see, that's not going to work. Import docx. That's what it wants to do. Be clever. I have to edit this function here because it's looking for docx, but I imported the document from docx. And that won't work either. It actually wants doc docx. Alright, so this is looking good. This is the text from the Word document, so that makes me happy. That's pretty close to where we were with the text file. So probably we can rerun some of that same text file analysis on this Word document and get it into the state we want. So let's, just for consistency, I'll use the same variable name. So we'll put it as file content as string. Alright, so now we've got that data stored to our variable. And then the next thing that we did was we removed the punctuation from that. So let's see if that works for our Word document. We're going to remove the punctuation. And just check what that looks like. So we should remove the /ns first. So let's do that. Alright, so when we run the replace function, it does it not in place. It produces the output, so we have to save that. Right. Now we've removed the punctuation. That's much better. Right, that actually looks like pretty much what we needed. So now we can convert that same. There weren't any unusual characters, so we can leave those out. We're going to split and then remove all the empty strings. So here, if we run that, and then the list of strings was not what we wanted. Let's see. There we go. So now we have a list of the words, and there's some stop words in there. So again, we'll have to do that same stop word removal. So we could go through that, but I'm going to save that. We're pretty much at a state where I'm happy. So I'm going to hold off on doing that until we're ready to write within the loop. Alright, so now we can go and return to our looping over the text and docx files. So let's see, so if the file name okay. So now it says, let's see, these file attention. Okay, so it complained about the DAT file and the IPYNB since those aren't things we care about. So in this case, we've got an else if, and else condition, and so that's pretty much what we expected. So now we're going to write cases here, and I'm just going to ignore the output of formats we don't care about. So I'll put in a pass statement there. So now we've separated out our files. All right, so now let's start with the text files. We did those first. All right, we analyzed one text file, and so the steps that we took, we read the file from disk, and this is now file name. And then the next thing that we did was we replaced all the new lines with spaces. So now to construct my loop, I'm just taking all the things that we did and including them as steps, and that should be okay. Right, so the width, the reason I just unindented was because this width open is the file, and I'm reading the content. Once I've gotten the file content in this variable, then I don't need to be having the file open anymore, so I come back outside of that, back to my original indentation. Okay. So we've replaced that, and I'm going to remove the punctuation from my string files. I remove the punctuation, and there's a few extra steps for non-standard punctuation characters. Okay, and I've got a little reminder in there that I still need to remove the HTTP addresses. Let's see, so remove that. I think I may have skipped this. Let's see. So I did remove the punctuation. Oh yeah, here we go. So I removed the punctuation, then I removed the non-standard characters. Now I'm gonna change that big long string into a long list. So now at this point I have a list that contains no empty strings. Back up here, and then I'm going to take that list of words and make it unique using the set operation. Now with that set of unique words, I'll remove all the stop words. Alright, so I recognize here that I'm creating this stop words variable inside of the loop. I actually don't need to do that, so I'm going to remove the stop words and put it outside the loop here. So I'm just going to load it once basically, and then it will be available and defined all the time that I need it. Right, so down here at the very bottom here, we have a filtered string list with all the URLs that start with HTTP removed. Alright, so let's see, what did we do after that? Where was it? Looking at the dockets. Alright, so we removed the stop words, and then at the very end, we wrote the lines to a file. Right, so at the bottom of this loop, so after I've done all my conditions, so right here, this is where I have a list of words ready to be written to file. Now I could do a couple different approaches here. What I'm going to say is I'm going to open that DAT file and write to it But if I do that, it's going to overwrite whatever else is there. So I want to actually append to that. Let's see, I think Python W plus node. So let's see. No, I want to append. Let's see. All right, so A is append mode. That's good to know. All right, so I'm going to append to the file. I'm going to write the name of the file as the file name inside the loop. And then for that list of words, it's just going to append and append and append. All right, let's give that a shot, see if this notebook works. And we haven't finished up the docx, but that's on my list of things to do. All right, so it's parsing through all these text files and then opening up the dat file and writing to it word by word. So it's taking a little bit of extra time there. All right, and then it's finished. So that was relatively quick. Let's take a look at what it looks like in Atom. The name of the file was out.dat. That exists in the temp directory. Out.dat. Oops. Alright, so my out.dat file at the very top. Let me figure that out. No, this isn't. There we go. So now I'm in my out.dat file. The first file it picked up was dryawn.txt. And then as we scroll down here, these are all the words in that document. So we can figure out the next file name. There we go. Alright, so it looks like I have a problem. I'm not writing a new line after each file is written, so I'm going to go back to my notebook. So what I need to do here after doing this is file.write and then a new line. Alright, so I'm going to rerun this. Actually, let me delete the output file. Let's close this. And I'm going to delete the out.dat file. Alright, restart, run all. So I sort of recognized that I was missing line breaks, and that's how I knew to figure out that line break there. So I'm writing the file name once, looping over the list of all the words, followed by a comma, and then at the very end inserting a new line. So now our first text file was random.txt. That should be the top of our out.dat. Okay, so it was not quite the same order, which is interesting. Random.txt. Oh, it's appending, it's backwards. Interesting. Right. Now we've got the name of the file all in one line with double quotes and a colon and all the words in that file. So we're almost done. The last thing that we need to do, after close that, is finish up the docx. So it's basically going to be pretty similar. Alright, if we remember the docx file, let's minimize that. What we did was we had this function, get text, and so I'm going to reuse that same function. File content as string, get text. And then I'm going to replace that static file name with a variable file name. And then, so it turns out all the other things that we need to do for the same. So remember the docx file, basically once we got it into that file content as string, all the same operations are going to apply. So rather than doing them once for text and once for Word documents, I'll just get them into a common format, and then everything else will be shared. And this else statement has to go up here. So, all right. So now I'm basically opening up the docx file. I'm opening up the text file, and both of those are saving into the same variable name. And I'm applying the same operations to all of the files. And then at the end, inside the for loop, I'm writing to an out.dat file and appending each line. Alright, so that looks pretty good. Let's give it a shot. I'm going to remove the out.dat file one more time. The other thing that I mentioned in the assignment was to remove all of the digits. So we have to go in there one more thing and replace all the digits. Let's see how we can do that in Python. Let's do this one. We're going to remove all the things that are digits. That'll get rid of all of our phone numbers. We'll have to do that when we're up here. Let's take that. Restart in the kernel. Let's take a look at that output file. Interesting. Looks like there's some line breaks. Ah, yes. All right. In our Word document, there are some line breaks causing issues, but other than that, it looks reasonably good. So in our Word week 10 docx file, looks like there's some extra line breaks I don't like. So let's go back and clean that up. Ah, there we go. So I had to replace, yeah, so I had to remove the line breaks up here. So let's do this. Okay. I can make spaces, that's probably a little bit more effective. Okay, now let's try it again. So I'm going to close the out.dat. We'll delete the original file on the disk. Delete that. I'm going to restart my kernel, starting over from the very beginning. We'll see if we've got all the bugs worked out from the solution. That is, I'm waiting for the star here to change to a number. Now that indicates that the cell finished, so now I can open out.dat. Right, so I've got my Dr. Yawn and then all that text there, and then the next file starts in the next line and has all that words. Right, so now I'm happy. I'm done with the assignment. I removed all the numbers, all the URLs, all the punctuation, and I have removed all the stop words, and I've got the data in a format that I want.